A 6-year-old girl vanished mysteriously. A French film producer found dead near her holiday home. The Vanishing Triangle, 8 women who disappeared with 0 traces. Welcome once more, dear viewer, to an Ace Mysteries video. Today we aim to dive into some of the fascinatingly tragic events that have taken place in the great Irish nation, all of which remain unsolved. Sit back and relax as we discuss 5 unsolved cases from Ireland. The disappearance of Mary Boyle. Mary Boyle's disappearance is one of Ireland's most heart-wrenching mysteries. Born on June 14, 1970, Mary was a young and adventurous 6-year-old girl who lived in the townland of Cashalard, County Donegal. She was the youngest of 7 children and lived with her parents, Anne and Charlie Boyle, and her siblings. On the day of her disappearance, March 18, 1977, Mary and her family were visiting her grandparents' home nearby. It was a day like no other, and Mary was seen in good spirits, playing and interacting with her cousins. At around 3:30 p.m, Mary left the house with her uncle, Jerry Gallagher, to walk the short distance back to her own house. Jerry later stated that they had taken a shortcut through some fields and he allowed Mary to walk ahead. However, when he reached the house a few minutes later, Mary was nowhere to be found. The family immediately called for a search party, but there was no sign of the little girl. The local community, along with the Gardaí, otherwise known as Irish police, quickly joined in the search efforts. Despite their best efforts, however, Mary Boyle had seemingly vanished without a trace. The search efforts for Mary Boyle were extensive and involved a wide range of resources, including local communities, the Gardaí, the Irish Army, and even the British Army. Immediately after Mary's disappearance on March 18, 1977, her family and the local community launched a frantic search. They scoured the fields, forests, and countryside surrounding Cashalard, hoping to find any trace of the missing girl. Hundreds of volunteers joined in the search, combing the area for any sign of Mary. The Gardaí took charge of the investigation and coordinated the search efforts. They deployed search teams, dogs, and helicopters to cover the extensive terrain. The initial search focused on the immediate vicinity of Mary's disappearance, but as time passed, the search expanded to include a wider area. The Irish Army was called in to assist in the search efforts, particularly in the remote and challenging terrain of County Donegal. Soldiers conducted thorough searches of forests, hillsides, and waterways, hoping to uncover any clues that could lead to Mary's whereabouts. The British Army also joined the search efforts. Due to the political tension between Britain and Northern Ireland, this was a risky move. Given the proximity of the Cashalard to the border with Northern Ireland, there were concerns that Mary might have been taken across the border. The British Army provided additional manpower and resources to assist in the search, collaborating with the Gardaí and the Irish Army. Despite the extensive search operations, no trace of Mary Boyle was found during the initial search efforts. Over the following days, weeks, and months, the search continued, with volunteers and authorities refusing to give up hope. The case garnered significant media attention, which helped keep Mary's name and image in the public eye. Throughout the years, there have been sporadic renewed search efforts and appeals for information. For instance, in 2011, the documentary Mary Boyle, The Untold Story, reignited public interest in the case and led to a renewed search operation. Volunteers, including local community members and professional search teams, scoured the areas around Cashalard once again, hoping to uncover new evidence or clues. However, these efforts did not yield any breakthroughs. The search efforts for Mary Boyle have involved not only physical searches but also appeals for information from the public. The Boyle family, with the help of media campaigns and documentaries, has consistently urged anyone with information to come forward. They believe that someone within the local community may hold vital information about Mary's disappearance. Over the years, various theories and potential suspects have emerged in the case. Some theories suggest that Mary might have fallen into a nearby river or been the victim of an accidental incident. Others point to the possibility of an abduction or foul play. One of the early suspects in the case was a local man who had a history of sexual offenses, but he was later ruled out as a suspect. This man, unnamed publicly to our knowledge, was believed to have been sending hate-fueled letters to Mary Boyle's mother. Interestingly, one of these letters was believed to have been sent by Mary herself, an indication found by comparing her schoolwork to the letter. Unfortunately for the family and investigation, this suspect passed away in 2018, taking with him one of the few leads in Mary's disappearance. Mary's clothing was never found, nor was her distinctive Wellington's or Tato bag. Additionally, the fields in which she vanished are a popular spot for adventurous children, wearing similar Wellington boots trampling the crime scene, subsequently destroying any and all footprints that would have been left by Mary. Mary's case received significant media attention, and her family tirelessly campaigned to keep her name and image in the public eye. They believed that someone within the local community had vital information about her disappearance but had not come forward. As time passed, the Boyle family faced additional tragedies. In 1985, Mary's mother, Anne, died at the age of 45, and her father, Charlie, passed away in 1996, both without knowing what had happened to their youngest daughter. Mary's siblings continued to seek answers, and the case remained open but dormant for many years. The disappearance of Mary Boyle was thrust back into the public spotlight once again in recent years, particularly with the release of the documentary Mary Boyle: The Untold Story, which I had previously mentioned in 2011. To elaborate on this, it prompted fresh appeals for information. There were calls for a cold case review, and in 2018 it was announced that the Gardaí had reclassified Mary's case as a murder investigation. Sophie Toscan du Plantier. Sophie Toscan du Plantier was a French film producer who mysteriously disappeared in Ireland, sparking an investigation that captivated both Irish and French societies. Born on July 28, 1957, in Paris, Sophie was known for her love of art and cinema. She had a successful career as a film and television producer and was married to French filmmaker Daniel Toscan du Plantier. On December 23, 1996, Sophie was staying at her holiday home in Tourmore, County Cork. The remote cottage known as Turnsel offered her a peaceful retreat. That evening, Sophie had dinner with a local friend, Frédéric Gazier, before returning to her cottage for the night. The following morning, on December 24, 1996, Sophie's battered body was discovered near her home. She had been brutally beaten to death. The news of her tragic death sent shockwaves through both Irish and French society, attracting extensive media coverage and public attention. The investigation into Sophie's murder was a complex and prolonged process. The Gardaí led the investigation, but due to the isolated location of the crime scene and the lack of witnesses, progress was challenging. The initial stages of the investigation focused on gathering evidence from the crime scene, conducting forensic analysis, and interviewing potential witnesses. Various theories emerged regarding the motive behind Sophie's murder and the identity of the perpetrator. One theory suggested that her death may have been linked to a dispute with a resident. Another theory pointed to a possible connection with organized crime. However, concrete evidence linking a specific suspect to the crime was scarce. Over the years, the investigation pursued numerous leads and questioned several individuals in connection with the case. In 1997, the Gardaí arrested and questioned an Englishman, Ian Bailey, who lived near Sophie's cottage. He was considered a suspect and was eventually charged with her murder in 1998. Ian Bailey maintained his innocence throughout the legal proceedings, and the case against him ultimately collapsed. The charges were dropped due to lack of evidence, and no one has been convicted of Sophie's murder to this day. This case remains unsolved, with no clear resolution or definitive identification of the perpetrator. The notion of an organized crime connection was indicated by several factors, including the violent nature of the crime, the isolated location of the murder scene, and the difficulties investigators faced in uncovering substantial leads. These elements led some to theorize that Sophie's murder may have been a targeted hit or a result of a criminal dispute. However, it is important to emphasize that the organized crime theory was just one of the possibilities explored during the investigation. No concrete evidence was presented to substantiate this theory, and no specific individuals or organizations were definitively linked to the crime. The complexities surrounding the case and the lack of conclusive evidence have made it difficult for investigators to establish a clear motive or identify the responsible party. The potential organized crime connection remains speculative and has not led to any significant breakthroughs in solving the case. It is worth noting that investigations into crimes potentially linked to organized crime can be particularly challenging. Such networks are known for their secrecy, protection, and resistance to law enforcement. Gathering evidence and obtaining cooperation from individuals involved in these networks can prove to be a formidable task for investigators. Despite the theories and speculations regarding a potential organized crime connection, no conclusive evidence or leads have emerged that definitively link the crime to organized criminal activity. The impact of Sophie's murder on Irish and French society was profound. In Ireland, the case shed light on issues such as rural crime, the effectiveness of the criminal justice system, and the handling of high-profile cases. The investigation's protracted nature and the lack of resolution led to criticisms of the Gardaí and their handling of the case. In France, Sophie's murder received significant media attention and sparked public outrage. The case became a cause célèbre, and her family actively sought justice for her death. The French media closely followed the investigation, and Sophie's murder became a symbol of the shortcomings of the Irish justice system in the eyes of many in France. The impact of the case extended beyond the immediate legal and investigative spheres. It influenced the broader perception of Ireland as a safe tourist destination and raised questions about the safety of individuals in remote rural areas. The case also highlighted the challenges faced by law enforcement when investigating crimes in isolated locations. In recent years, the case has continued to attract attention and generate discussions. Documentaries, books, and media coverage have kept the spotlight on the unsolved murder of Sophie. Efforts by both Irish and French authorities to collaborate on the investigation and seek justice for Sophie's family have also continued. Sophie's murder remains a haunting mystery, with the quest for justice and closure for her family ongoing. The impact of her disappearance and the subsequent investigation on Irish and French society is a testament to the enduring nature of unsolved cases and their ability to resonate far beyond their immediate circumstances. How well do you know your area, dear viewer? The Vanishing Triangle. A city-line triangle is formed between Dublin, Leinster, and Wicklow. Much like the famous Bermuda Triangle, this triangle is also home to an eerie series of unexplained disappearances. Only here, women went missing, not planes. While 8 women in total disappeared, let's take a look at 3 of them. Annie McCarrick, a 26-year-old American citizen living in Dublin, vanished on March 26, 1993. She was last seen in Johnny Fox's pub in the Dublin mountains. Annie had plans to meet a friend for dinner but never arrived. Despite extensive searches and investigations, no trace of her has ever been found. Witnesses reported seeing Annie in the company of an unidentified man on the day of her disappearance, but this lead failed to yield any concrete breakthroughs. Jojo Dullard, a 21-year-old woman from County Kilkenny, went missing on November 9, 1995. She was last seen hitchhiking on the outskirts of Dublin after visiting her family. Witnesses reported seeing her talking to a man in a car, but Jojo vanished without a trace. Despite numerous searches and appeals for information, her fate remains unknown. The case gained significant attention, and Jojo's disappearance became a rallying point for campaigns to raise awareness about the dangers of hitchhiking. Fiona Pender, a 25-year-old woman from Tullamore, County Offaly, disappeared on August 23, 1996. She was 7 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance. Fiona was last seen leaving her apartment, and it's believed she intended to visit a local store. Despite very intense efforts by law enforcement and her family, no definitive evidence has been uncovered regarding her whereabouts or what happened to her. The disappearance of Fiona Pender had a profound impact on a local community and intensified concerns about the safety of women in the area. The Vanishing Triangle cases generated significant public speculation and led to various theories regarding possible connections between them. One theory suggests the involvement of a serial killer or a predator specifically targeting young women. Others believe that the disappearances may be unrelated and a result of individual circumstances. However, no concrete evidence has emerged to support any specific theory. The serial killer theory emerged as one of the speculations surrounding the Vanishing Triangle cases, suggesting the possibility of a single perpetrator responsible for the disappearances of Annie McCarrick, Jojo Dullard, and Fiona Pender, among others. This theory gained traction due to the similarities in the victim's profile, the geographical proximity of the disappearance, and the apparent lack of resolution in each case. The theory posits that a serial killer or potentially multiple offenders working in tandem targeted young women in the area. Serial killers often exhibit patterns in their crimes, such as specific victim profiles, methods of abduction or disposal, and geographic areas of operation. The Vanishing Triangle cases seem to fit this pattern, as all 3 women were young, vanished without a trace, and their crimes remained unsolved. Supporters of the serial killer theory argue that the victims' disappearances share certain commonalities. They point to the geographical proximity of the Vanishing Triangle cases, which occurred within a relatively small area in and around Dublin, Leinster and Wicklow. This proximity led to speculation that the perpetrator might have had intimate knowledge of the region, using it as a hunting ground. Furthermore, the victims all seemingly vanished under mysterious circumstances, with no conclusive evidence pointing to their fate or identifying a specific perpetrator. This lack of concrete leads, despite extensive investigations and searches, added to the notion that a skilled and elusive predator may be responsible. However, it's important to note that while the serial killer theory has been discussed and considered, no definitive evidence has been presented to confirm its validity. It is worth emphasizing that serial killer investigations are complex and often require substantial evidence to establish patterns and connections, and ultimately link specific crimes to an individual or group. In the absence of such evidence, the serial killer theory remains a speculation rather than a confirmed explanation for the Vanishing Triangle cases. The lack of resolution in these cases has had a lasting impact on the local communities affected by the disappearances. Fear and unease permeated the region, particularly among women, who became more cautious and vigilant in their daily lives, which is quite frankly no way for people to live. Nobody should be afraid for the homes they live in. These cases highlighted the vulnerability of individuals, the challenges faced by law enforcement agencies in investigating such mysteries, and the devastating impact on the families left searching for answers. While suspects have been considered and investigated in connection to the Vanishing Triangle cases, no one has been definitively linked to the disappearances. Over the years, names have emerged, but without conclusive evidence, the investigations have hit dead ends. The case remains open. With this being said, a few suspects have been named and questioned based on their backgrounds. Larry Murphy, a convicted rapist, has been subject of interest in the Vanishing Triangle cases. He was arrested in the year 2000 for the abduction, rape, and attempted murder of a woman in County Carlow. Murphy was known for his violent sexual offenses, and his resemblance to photo fits created from witness descriptions in some of the cases led to his scrutiny. No definitive evidence linking him to the disappearances has been established. Graham Dwyer, an architect, gained attention concerning the Vanishing Triangle cases due to his connection to Elaine O'Hara, a woman whose remains were found in the Dublin Mountains in 2013. Dwyer was convicted of O'Hara's murder in 2015. The investigation into Dwyer revealed his involvement in BDSM activities and fantasies, leading to speculation about potential connections to other cases. However, no direct evidence has been presented linking Dwyer to the Vanishing Triangle disappearances. Dean Lyons, a Dublin criminal with a history of violent offences, has also been named as a possible suspect. He has been implicated in multiple crimes, including kidnapping and murder. While his criminal activities and association with other criminal elements led to his consideration as a suspect, nothing ultimately has tied him to the Vanishing Triangle cases. It is important to emphasize that these individuals have been named as suspects based on various factors, including their criminal history, resemblance to witness descriptions, or proximity to the areas where the disappearances occurred. However, the lack of evidence linking any specific individual to the cases has made it challenging to establish guilt or involvement. The investigation into the disappearance of Annie McCarrick, Jojo Dullard, and Fiona Pender and other cases within the Vanishing Triangle has been a truly complex and challenging process. Law enforcement agencies, including the Gardaí, dedicated significant resources to these investigations, but they have faced numerous obstacles in their pursuit of answers. The investigations began immediately after each woman was reported missing. Law enforcement agencies conducted extensive searches, interviewed witnesses, and gathered evidence, and appealed to the public for information. Despite these efforts, however, progress in the cases has been limited and the investigations have faced significant hurdles. One of the primary difficulties in these cases has been the lack of concrete evidence. The victims seemingly vanished without a trace, leaving few leads for investigators to follow. Without key evidence, such as eyewitness accounts, forensics, or conclusive proof of foul play, the investigations have struggled to establish a clear direction. Additionally, the passage of time has presented challenges. The disappearances of Annie McCarrick and the like occurred in the 1990s, and the investigations have spanned several decades. The longer the cases remain unsolved, the harder it becomes to gather new information, locate potential witnesses, or identify significant leads. The lasting effects of the Vanishing Triangle cases extend beyond the immediate impact on the families involved. The unresolved nature of these disappearances has left a sense of unease and a lingering shadow over the communities affected. The cases serve as a truly painful reminder of the enduring trauma and anguish experienced by loved ones left behind. The death of Raonaid Murray. Raonaid Murray was a 17-year-old Irish teenager whose tragic death on September 4th, 1999 shocked the nation and left many unanswered questions. The nature of her crime, the theories surrounding it, the evidence, suspects and witnesses have all contributed to the enduring mystery of her case. Raonaid Murray grew up in Glenageary, a suburb of Dublin, Ireland. She was known as a vibrant and popular young woman with a passion for music and a promising future ahead of her. On the night of her death, Raonaid had spent the evening with friends at a local pub before leaving to walk home alone. The crime took place in the early hours of September 4th, 1999, when Raonaid was brutally attacked and stabbed to death just a short distance from her family home. Her body was discovered in an alleyway near Silchester Crescent, a residential area in Glenageary. The nature of the crime shocked the community, and the senseless and violent nature of Raonaid's death has intensified public interest in the case. Several theories have emerged to explain the circumstances surrounding Raonaid Murray's murder, but no definitive answer has been found. One theory suggests that Raonaid was a victim of a random act of violence committed by an unknown assailant. The lack of any apparent motive or personal connection between Raonaid and her attacker led to the creation of this theory. It raises the possibility that she encountered someone who targeted her at random, resulting in her tragic death. Another theory suggests that the crime may have been perpetrated by someone known to Raonaid. This theory speculates that the attacker may have had a personal vendetta or motive against her, possibly related to her personal relationships or acquaintances. However, no concrete evidence has been presented to support this theory, and the investigation has not identified any specific individuals as potential suspects with a personal connection to Raonaid. The evidence in this case has been vastly limited, and despite extensive forensic analysis and investigation, no conclusive breakthroughs have been made. The murder weapon has never been recovered, hindering efforts to establish a direct link between any potential suspects and the crime scene. DNA samples and other evidence collected from the scene have been examined, but no matches or definitive leads have been identified. The lack of conclusive evidence has made identifying suspects a challenging task. Over the years, numerous individuals have been considered as potential suspects, but no one has been linked to the crime. The investigation has explored leads and followed up on tips from the public, but the case remains unsolved. Supposedly, one of the potential witnesses falsified their claim on behalf of their suspect. Unnamed to the public, the man was seen returning to the scene of the crime after the body was removed from Silchester Park. Our evidence is all circumstantial, but we believe he is a strong suspect, a source said. An elaborate alibi was created which involved the other suspect, and the fact that it was false is a cause of concern to us. Witnesses have played a crucial role in the investigation, providing statements and descriptions of individuals seen in the vicinity of the crime scene on the night of Raonaid's murder. However, despite their cooperation, the descriptions provided have not led to the identification of a primary suspect or a breakthrough in the case. The murder of Raonaid Murray has had a grueling impact on her family, the local community, and the wider public. It's left a lasting sense of grief, fear, and frustration, as the lack of resolution has meant that justice has not been served for Raonaid, as goes with these unsolved mysteries. The case continues to receive attention, and appeals for information from the public persist in the hopes that someone may come forward with crucial details or evidence that can help bring closure to the case. But given the fact that lies to the investigation were told, it's unlikely the perpetrator will ever be found. The murder of Elaine O'Hara. Elaine O'Hara was an Irish woman whose life and death became the focus of intense media attention in a high-profile trial. Her case shed light on her involvement in a BDSM relationship and the subsequent investigation that led to the arrest and trial of Graham Dwyer, as well as the exploration of other potential suspects. Elaine O'Hara, born on March 17, 1976, battled with mental health issues throughout her life. She had a history of self-harm and had spent time in psychiatric hospitals. O'Hara was also known to have struggled with depression and had made previous suicide attempts. One significant aspect of Elaine O'Hara's life was her involvement in a BDSM relationship. She engaged in consensual acts of bondage and domination with Graham Dwyer, an architect. The nature of their relationship included explicit sexual activities and fantasies, which they communicated through emails, text messages, and online platforms. However, the investigation into Elaine O'Hara's disappearance took a dark turn when her remains were discovered in the Dublin Mountains in September 2013, more than a year after she went missing. This discovery led to the initiation of a murder investigation and subsequent trial. Graham Dwyer emerged as the prime suspect in Elaine O'Hara's murder. The evidence against him included the discovery of O'Hara's belongings, including her phone and personal items, in the possession of Dwyer. Additionally, extensive forensic analysis of Dwyer's phone and computer revealed incriminating evidence, including explicit and disturbing material related to BDSM activities and discussions of violent fantasies. The trial of Graham Dwyer, which began in January 2015, garnered significant media attention in Ireland. Prosecution presented a wealth of evidence, including the recovered items, phone records, computer data, and testimony from witnesses. The most chilling piece of evidence was a video recording recovered from Dwyer's computer, depicting a violent sexual encounter involving a woman resembling Elaine O'Hara. Throughout the trial, Dwyer pled innocence, claiming that the BDSM activities were consensual and that Elaine O'Hara had died by suicide. The prosecution argued that Dwyer had manipulated and exploited O'Hara, leading to her death. After a lengthy trial, Graham Dwyer was found guilty of murder on March 27, 2015, and sentenced to life imprisonment. It is important to note that while Graham Dwyer was convicted for Elaine O'Hara's murder, the investigation also explored other potential suspects. The nature of O'Hara's lifestyle and the evidence collected during the investigation raised questions about possible involvement by other individuals. However, no conclusive evidence linking other suspects to the crime was presented, and Dwyer's conviction represented the culmination of the investigation. The case of Elaine O'Hara and the trial of Graham Dwyer raised significant public debate and scrutiny regarding the nature of BDSM relationships, consent, and the potential dangers associated with such practices. It also highlighted the complexities of investigations into cases involving alternative lifestyles, mental health issues, and the challenges of gathering evidence in the digital age. While Dwyer was tried and convicted for the murder, it remains to be solved whether or not he was the only one involved in her death. Several individuals were initially considered as potential suspects before the focus of the investigation shifted to Graham Dwyer. The following are some of the other potential suspects who garnered attention during the investigation. Greg Ward, a former partner of Elaine O'Hara, was initially considered as a person of interest in the case. Their relationship ended and Ward had a history of violence and restraining orders against him. He was cleared of any involvement in O'Hara's murder after his alibi was corroborated and no evidence linked him to the crime scene. Ross Outram, a former friend of Graham Dwyer, was briefly investigated as a potential suspect. Outram has engaged in BDSM activities with Dwyer and knew of their involvement with Elaine O'Hara. No evidence linking Outram to O'Hara's murder was found and did not face any charges for the murder subsequently. During the investigation, the police explored other leads and potential suspects based on the evidence and information gathered. These unidentified individuals were not publicly named and their identities and involvement in the case remain unknown. To this day, only a few people may know what truly happened to O'Hara. And there you have it, dear viewer. As always, if you have any information regarding these cases, however unlikely that may be, contact the appropriate authorities. It may make a difference. Thank you for making it to the end. If you did, consider liking and subscribing. So what do you think, dear viewer? Were there any other cases you would have preferred to talk about? Let us know in the comments below. Take care now.